My name again is Malcolm Etheridge. I guess, primary role, as you saw in the write-up, I'm a financial advisor with Wells Fargo. And so I spend a lot of time working with small business owners on basically anything you can't walk into a bank center and do at the teller window. That's essentially what my function is. So happy to answer any questions on that after we get done with this one. But how I kind of come into this one, I am an outside sales role kind of person. And over the last couple of years, I have wholly embraced LinkedIn and have brought almost every single new relationship almost every single new relationship that I've brought in myself into the business has been through using LinkedIn. And so I don't know how many of you guys are like myself and consider yourselves to be professional networkers and kind of just found a way to monetize it. That's essentially where I am. LinkedIn is an awesome tool that has allowed me to do a lot of the groundwork that you normally wouldn't have been able to do prior to its existence. So just to kind of take the temperature of the room really quickly, can I get a show of hands just of everybody who's already on the platform? Okay, great. So that's literally everybody. So I don't have to go through the trouble of talking to you about how to set up and get logged on, logged in, all that kind of stuff. The things that I wanted to share with you guys are essentially a few tools. One, making sure that your profile is as full and robust as it possibly can be. And then also figuring out ways to help increase your visibility so that folks are doing searches for you and your company, you show up higher than most of the people you're competing against, what they call search engine optimization. And then lastly, how to do a search yourself and drill down a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further to find the folks who you're planning on targeting. So I don't know how many of you have been on in the last, I'd say like 3 weeks, to notice the drastic shift that LinkedIn has made to the presentation of their program. If you're anything like me, you're extremely annoyed with it because they took away a good bit of the free features that I used to love. And when I do these trainings, would always harp on. So there are still some really fantastic ones that you can use for free. I'm not advocating on behalf of LinkedIn at all. I promise that anybody sign up for a premium membership. If you don't know, you do get a 30-day free trial of their premium memberships. I would just make sure that I urge you to, if you are going to cancel it, make sure that you do cancel it within that first 30 days because they will bill you for that full $300 to $500 on the back end if you don't. But definitely take advantage of having the opportunity to use the premium service because it does give you a bunch of great features. They also commit to putting you toward the top of searches because you've now become a paying customer. And so obviously, your business is the customers who pay you are obviously going to get access to the best parts of your business. So with that said, I'm going to jump into a couple of things here. I have, as I mentioned, those 3 spots that I like to go through and make sure that I kind of do the framework of the presentation around. If at any point you do have a question, just raise your hand. I'll come to you as soon as I finish the part that I'm wanting to get through, and then we'll make sure that this is somewhat interactive. I don't just want to be here, going through and preaching at you guys. I want to make sure that the questions you came with actually are getting answered. So, with that said, obviously this is what LinkedIn's homepage now looks like. So anybody who hasn't been on in the last, I'd say, 3.5 weeks, you may not have noticed it, but it essentially looks the exact same way as it does when you pull it up on mobile now. So if you use it on your iPad, iPhone, cell phone, that kind of thing, this is exactly how it reads. And so now they've made it so that it's seamless across the board and no drop off. So the first thing that I'll walk you through is the profile. And so here is where you can build in literally any and everything you want folks to know about you as a business owner, business professional. The very top is the most important part, but I'm going to come back to it last. And when I say very top, I'm talking about the summary section here that you can expand and that sort of thing. But you want to make sure that you're building in all of the information that you want folks to find. So up here where you see this little pencil, you can click on it and it'll allow me to go in and hand create all of this information initially, or if you wanted to link to some sort of media that you have that already answers all these questions and more in a much better way, you have the ability to do that as well. And so mine is already filled in, obviously, but we will take the time to go through a couple of spots that help build out that profile to make sure that folks are seeing you. So in the experience section, this is probably one of the most important parts, because if you are a small business owner and you don't have a separate company page, this is the place where you want to build in all of the good stuff about you and your company and what you do, the things that give you sort of some standing in your arena. So if you are a psychologist, for example, or HR professional or something like that, this is the place that you go to list all of those, not bullet point, but all of those detailed resume type details. So you'll go in there and tell a story about what it is that you do in your area, and then fill it in here with all of the other past roles that are related to what it is that you currently do. So my industry is a little bit more strict than the average, so there's a limited amount of details that I'm able to share on my page. But I do encourage you, if you have roles that are in the past in here in these two blocks, and you have the ability to go in there and update it with other projects that you worked on or other teams that you were a part of at former professions, that you go in there and fill those in with as much detail as what I've done at the very top of that one. And then also, obviously, you can fill in your education, and you're actually able to put descriptions if you have sort of a very specific program that you're a part of. Maybe you did like the SHRM certification. You want to just put in a little bit more detail on what that is, or something similar. And then also, another key part in here is the certifications. So if you're a person, like government contractor, for example, and maybe you're 8A certified, or woman-owned small business, or veteran-owned business, or something like that, that's the spot that you're going to go in and make sure that you put that, well, that's one of the spots that you're going to go in and make sure that you put that detail in there. And then aside from that, what we're going to do is fill in the skills and endorsements to make sure that everything that you are capable of doing in your role, whatever your business is focused on, or you as the individual are focused on, you want to go in and make sure that you put in as many of those as you possibly can. But you want to make sure that as you're filling them in, where you see add new skill here, so when you hit that, you want to make sure that the thing that you put in is actually showing up in the drop down. And so I'll just put in banking, for example. If the selection that I'm making doesn't show up in that drop down, it doesn't exist as far as LinkedIn is concerned. And if it doesn't exist as far as LinkedIn is concerned, if I am looking for someone who does what you do for a living, I won't find you when I go in and put that particular selection in there. So if I put works at a bank, then it doesn't show up the same way as if I put banking, if that makes sense. So just be very careful that each time you go in and make a description for your skill set, it does actually show up on there. And then also at the bottom of this, you see an option for me to alert my network every time I make an adjustment to my page. Mine is defaulted to be off. I don't want to be that person who's extremely annoying, and every time you come on LinkedIn, they have some new update that they've just added a skill, or changed their address, or changed their phone number format, or anything like that. So mine is turned off. If and when I have something significant to share, like maybe changing a job, or graduating from another certification program, or whatever, then maybe I want to put that in there so that it gets pushed to my network. But I'm not throwing that in there every single time I make just a small adjustment. So keep that in mind, that you don't want to be that person who's constantly getting ignored.
Sorry.
Sure.
So if I want to be like you and I just want the updates to show when it's a significant change, do I turn on the off button before I make the adjustment?
Yes.
Before. Okay.
Yep. So before you hit submit, make sure that off button is selected, and it'll gray it out to let you know that you have it turned off. Otherwise, it'll show as green.
But sorry, if before I want it to be turned on, do I have to turn it on before I submit a change?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Yep.
Under the add scale, does it have the option of does it have that option of other? So, because I do public relations and event as a bundle, and so sometimes when I go in, it doesn't really pop up. A lot of sites doesn't really have it like that. So you have the option of selecting other, so you can fill in that information.
So other is going to be you typing in what that information is. If you do it, LinkedIn probably has a phrase that they use to capture it. If it isn't in their phraseology, then it doesn't exist as far as they're concerned. So you may have to use fewer words or use more words to say that thing that you're trying to convey, but it does need to be one of those that shows up in their drop down in order to show up in one of these bubbles. And if someone is searching for you for it, it shows up. Now, if you decide to just go ahead and type it the way you want it to be, it'll show on your page just the same. But just know that if I am searching for you and your services and what you do, I won't find you based on that thing. And then also the way LinkedIn's algorithm is built, the more of each. So if I put a 10-word search in there and 3 of those words are returned for you, but then 8 of those words are returned for her, she's going to show up above you. So by deciding to get creative in that way and building it out the way you want it, you're just reducing the chances that one of those 400 million members on LinkedIn will show up, and you won't.
You mentioned bubble, so is it a bubble? The whole platform thing, because if, like you said, if it's not on that list, it doesn't exist, which really isn't true. But
well, it doesn't exist as far as LinkedIn is concerned. Yeah.
Okay, so it's really not. Okay.
All right. So with the skills, you also have the ability to decide which one shows up where. So which ones show up higher than the other. So you can grab with this crosshair here, you can grab whichever one you want to move and then decide how important each one is and how high you want it to show up on your ranking. For folks whose business does multiple things, that's going to be extremely important because the way the mobile feature is set up, if I'm searching for you on my cell phone or my tablet, only 4 or 5 of these skills are going to show up on your page. So you want to choose which ones are the most important and move those up higher than the others, because that's what's going to determine how quickly, as I'm doing a search, I find what you're offering. So you, as the business owner, just have to make a determination of which is most important. So as you can see, for example, I have in here, it's in here somewhere, LinkedIn training. So it's not my day job. It is something that I've become an expert at, but it's not something that I'm necessarily needing folks to come find me for when they search for my page and I show up immediately. So it's toward the bottom of the feed, even though it is still a part of the feed. So just keep that in mind too. All right, and then obviously your volunteer experience kind of goes without saying. Those are the things that you want to highlight that you or your company are a part of and are active in. And then another thing that I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys is the, no, this isn't it. All right, another thing I wanted to show you guys is the summary section. So where I mentioned in the preview that there's certain ways to kind of game LinkedIn's algorithm and make sure that you're maximizing your search engine optimization. You have a second chance to fill in any additional, any similar skills that you want to make sure show up as part of your profile. So if I want to know what your business does, or if I want to find you, if I'm looking for a business that does something specific, so for example, life insurance. So I'm trying to find a company that handles life insurance, or a person specifically that handles life insurance, and I put that in my search bar up here toward the top, it's going to return me more likely than somebody who only has it listed in one place, because I've now added life insurance here, and then further down in those skills section where I told you before, it's in there twice. So the more times you have it built into your page, the more likely it is to show up. However, since Microsoft has bought LinkedIn, one thing that I know is a big deal for them, they're making sure to kind of tamp down the amount of times that people are, the amount of hits that someone is awarded based on throwing those words in there. So there's an optimal number. They won't tell me how many times that optimal number is, but you don't want to just write in life insurance 12 times and expect that that's going to be the thing that throws you at the top versus somebody else. There is a science to it, but kind of like the credit scoring process, they won't tell us exactly what those numbers are. We'd have no reason to pay them for it. So just, as you go in here and you write your summary, you want to make sure that you either write first person about yourself and how great you are and all the wonderful things that you and your company offer, or third person. You don't want it to be a mix of both, because the way that it reads to the potential audience is going to need to stay consistent throughout the entire page itself. If you are a business owner who has a company page too, I recommend that you make this one about yourself in the first person, and then make the company page about all the wonderful services that your company offers in the third person. And then it allows you to connect yourself as the business owner to that company. If you are a person who's a sole practitioner, then maybe you make it third person and talk about yourself, and then the things that your company offers when you go down to the description, the experience section here. And you can kind of alternate between the two of those. I had a question here.
Yeah, I was just curious, how did you set yours up? Because you work for Wells Fargo, did you?
Right, so because I work for someone else, I did third person. I'm also not gonna need to tell you anything about the company itself that you don't already see on banners all over the place in commercials.
So you didn't.
So it's a little bit different than being a small business owner, where this may be your sole means of getting your message out there to the public. So the whole idea behind this is to make sure that when I go to Google you, your business, your name, you show up in as many places as you possibly can, because your customers are making buying decisions about you and your company before they ever even engage you over the phone or via email 9 times out of 10. So this is another place that allows you to show that you have some credibility, you actually exist out there in the world. Because a lot of times, like I said, now, if I can't find you on LinkedIn and I can't find your webpage, you literally do not exist as far as I'm concerned as a customer. Sounds a little harsh, but that's the reality of where we are as purchasers at this point. So you just want to make sure that you're cognizant of that. And then you also have the ability to build in, let's see where it is. Okay, so you also have the ability to build in companies at the bottom. So here, I'm following Wells, so it gives you all the information you want to know about the company anyway. So I don't have as much of an issue with that one. All right, so any questions on the profile itself?
Yes. So if we want to follow an individual or a company, okay, let's say you have a personal LinkedIn page and you've got your business page.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to help you if you want to get business to follow particular businesses through yourself or through your business page?
Well, you're welcome to do both. That way you kind of guarantee that you don't miss anything. And I'll show you in a second about the feed, the news feed, and how things are kind of filtered through there. Because following a company does determine what shows up in that feed, and then how frequently you interact with that company also.
And this is all similar to following someone or an entity on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
or Twitter. It's very similar here with LinkedIn.
Right. So it helps to increase your visibility as far as they're concerned, but it would be necessary that someone at that company you're following is searching for someone similar to you. Does that make sense?
You have to make some sort of connection.
Right. So following them does help you get noticed by them if and when they're looking for you.
Right.
So it couldn't hurt. It definitely does help. You just kind of need that perfect storm of you looking for them and them
Right,
looking for
and
you.
they could be following you too.
That's true. So if they're following you, then it's a completely different scenario where you're 10 times more likely to be found by the folks you're wanting to be found
Right,
by.
and so then if you have a LinkedIn business page, what's the best strategy to get others to follow you?
So if you write, and I'll get into a little bit more on publishing articles, if you write articles and publish them to groups and on your company's page,
Right.
I can't say you're required to, but if I were you, I would be sharing those same articles that I publish for my company page on my own individual page. And then I'd be sending those to my network on Facebook and Twitter and wherever else and requesting that folks, retweet them, repost them, all that kind of stuff, because then it shows up in a bunch of different places that kind of get people caught up in this endless loop of you. And so just writing the article is great, but then sharing it in a bunch of different places that all lead back to it showing up to you, help you show up higher in those searches that I was talking about within LinkedIn's page. And we'll get into that in a second. A couple more things that I want to make sure I point out to you guys. Just that on here, you have the ability on the right-hand side, as you can see, to update any contact information that you want to have shown on your page. As a business owner especially, it is absolutely imperative that you make sure this information stays as up to date as possible, because if I search for you in Google and your LinkedIn page comes up to me in Google, it'll actually show me your contact information whether I click on your LinkedIn page or not. This is important because you are trying to get found by the people you'd like to do business with. So as much of this as you can possibly fill in, you want to fill in to give people no excuse to not be able to come find you.
As far as illegal sourcing, like a customer requested profile, how do you enter your LinkedIn profile? If a customer requests, they need information on your LinkedIn, your Facebook account, and stuff like that. Is that the correct way of entering it, like linkedin.com/?
So it's two ways. The easiest way is to go home and click on your own profile. As you can see up here in the search bar, it brings it up exactly like how I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
I just copy and paste that.
Okay, great.
You also have the option to go here and edit it over on the right hand side to make sure that this reads the exact way that you want it to. So it normally would have a whole bunch of numbers in there and a couple of dashes and some upside down arrows and all kind of craziness. I have gone in there and cleaned out what the URL is, because I want it to be as clean and as easy to recognize and remember as
So
possible.
that's why I was checking it out, because it had all these set of numbers. And
Right.
stuff. Okay.
So all that kind of stuff you're talking about shows up right there after that E where it's flashing.
You want to cut that out?
Backspace all of that stuff out of there. Either put an underscore between your name or a dash or a period or something that's easy to remember, and then leave it just like that. You don't want all the extra digits in there because it gets rejected a lot of times. And it also tells people, believe it or not, that you're not a serious LinkedIn user. And so if I'm a recruiter, for example, they're trained to spot people who actively learn how to use LinkedIn, and you're more likely to be a candidate of that recruiter. Or if I'm a program manager at a company and I'm responsible for getting a contract out, or I'm a procurement officer or something like that, it tells me how much of a novice and how much of a professional you are with this technology if you don't have something as simple as that cleaned up in your page.
Thank you for that.
Sure. All right, so the very last thing is a very simple thing, but extremely important. If your page does not have a picture on it, shame on you. So LinkedIn has it built in such a way that you are literally 11 times more likely to get found in a search if you just have a photo. So if you write all these notes down or don't write any notes and don't take anything else away from this presentation, put a picture on your profile. Otherwise, everything else you do is moot for the most part, because you will not get found. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, there's 400 million people around the world using LinkedIn every single day. And so you are competing against all of those people to not get crowded out and make sure that you get found. So the last thing you want to do is not do the thing that gives you all the bonus points you can possibly get, which is just adding a photo. So a simple photo, you want to make sure it's just you in the photo. And you also want to make sure it's, professional, obviously, but put a photo in there, make sure that you're taking advantage of those bonus points as well. So the next thing we're going to talk about is connections. So you have a sheet in front of you right now that gives you the details on how LinkedIn scores and rates your connections. And so as you go in, you can see the folks you're already connected to now will show up like this guy, tell you that you're connected. You have full visibility on their profile. You can send them messages all you would like to, and you can actually see their connections if they're allowing their connections to be public. And I'll show you in a little bit the security settings that you can use to either make sure your page and your network are public or private, because depending on what field you're in, sometimes you want to guard your connections more. Your page, on the other hand, I don't know why anybody would ever want their LinkedIn page to be private. The whole goal here, especially as business owners, is to make sure you get found as frequently as possible. But anyway, so your first connections, obviously you can see everything that they do. You receive updates from them. So every time they go on and share new information or write an article or even like somebody else's post, they show up in your activity feed. And I'll show you the activity feed in a second. And then second connections are friends of friends. So anybody I'm connected to who is connected to someone else who I haven't met yet shows up as a second connection. And then the more people who I have as first connections who are connected to that same second connection increases the probability that that person will be at the top of a search for me. So to go back and say that again, the more people who are friends with this guy who is friends with me, the higher that person shows up in LinkedIn's recommendations for people I might want to connect with and people that I should add to my network. Secondary connections, you can actually go on their page, view all their content just the same, and even send them in-mail messages. On third degree connections, LinkedIn assumes you have no idea who this person is from Adam, and they give you very limited details on who that person is, where they are. You can only see like their current position, not any past stuff. Can't see their contact information or any of that kind of stuff. So it is a different task getting to these folks who are the third connections, but it's extremely easy to get to these people once you realize that you already have a first connection who is connected to that person, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'll bounce to that one again in a second, but this is where your connections show. So from the home screen, oops. All right, so from the home screen, it gives me the option to go to my own page, and then it also allows me to pull up my connections by just clicking on my network. And then over here on the left-hand side, see all. But before I do that, one thing to be cognizant of too on this page, it's LinkedIn's algorithm once again doing its stuff and telling you all the people who it thinks you should connect to based on either folks who have been constantly viewing your page, or maybe if you're creating content, they've been viewing your content, or somebody like this person is connected to 74 other people who I know. So LinkedIn is saying, you need to go ahead and connect to this person because that way you can expand your network, or 52 here, or so on and so on. And it also tell me why somebody is a recommendation if they actually went to the same school as you. So I went to North Carolina A&T, so it shows me each time somebody else who went to my school is on here, that is the reason that they're recommending that you connect, because LinkedIn places a lot of weight in you being classmates with somebody. So it'll allow you to search just about any and everything you want to based on somebody else if they are also a fellow alum, because they assume that that's where your greatest connection is going to come from, either somebody you've worked with in the past or them being a fellow alum. So I'm going to click on See All here. It'll take me to all of my connections here, and then it'll actually sort them for me based on how frequently they use LinkedIn. So how active they are as members of LinkedIn determines how likely LinkedIn is to show me who my connections are. It'll also allow me to sort it just by the folks who I've added the most recently or alphabetically. But if you just give them the option to pull up all your contacts for you, and I'll show you how to do that. Where did I have it loaded? All right, so if I just hit the search tab here at the very top, just hit enter, it'll pull up all of my connections here, and it'll sort them based on who are the most popular people in my network. So who are the most active LinkedIn users, who's actually going on here, posting, who are the people that other people are connecting to more often. And then also, because now I mentioned LinkedIn is connected to Microsoft, they're owned by Microsoft and they're working on monetizing this whole thing. LinkedIn now also offers me people who they think I might want to know and should be connected to, because you can now pay to have yourself added to people's recommended connections. So for example, Timothy Myodopoulos, I've never met that guy before in my life, and I don't actually think I know why these two people who are shared connections know him either. But he shows up here probably 1 out of every 10 times I go and look at my connections because he's paying to show up there. So just be cognizant of that and know there's not a way to turn it off. Trust me, I've looked. But so you can go through and scroll and see your connections based on how popular they are, how often they. Sure.
So does that account for the sort of bottomless pit of, you scroll to the bottom and then it just keeps going?
Yes.
A lot of times.
So that grouping where it usually just says people you may know, that is actually based on people you may know, because you're in a group with them and they constantly look at your information or they constantly come to your page, or 5 other people who you're connected to just recently connected to that person too. And they're saying, hey, wait, you might know this person too, you should connect to him. That's always going to continue to scroll and scroll and scroll until they get us.
Be careful with that because you get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And you just sit there for a
Yes.
long time
All day.
Yes.
trying to scroll
And it
to
never
the bottom.
ends. Once you try to get
Never
to the end,
ends.
it just pops up with another series.
But on a snow day like yesterday, it was the
That would've
perfect
been
time to
perfect.
go through and actually see who are these people, how do I know these people, should I connect to
That's a
them?
good point.
And also, it gives you a chance to go through your own connections, and I'm a person who takes their own connections very seriously. So normally when I link to somebody who sends me a blind connection and says, hey, I'd like to add you to my group, I will accept that connection and then send that person an email and say, hey, would love to find out more about what it is that you do, how we might be able to help each other, something to that effect. And if I never get a response, I'll give it about a month and I'll pull that person out. Because what I'd hate to have happen is you pick up the phone, you're trying to get a project done, you call me up and say, hey, Malcolm, I see that you're connected to Tom. And I'd love an introduction to Tom because he's the last nail in the coffin to bring this project home, and that would make everything great. And I say, you know what, as I'm looking on here, I don't even really know that guy. So I can't do you any good. Well, then that makes me a lot less valuable in your own personal network. So I want to make sure that all the time when I have folks who are in my connections list, they're people that I at least have a reason to know why I know them, why I'm connected to them. Maybe we didn't go to school together, but we met at a DC Chamber of Commerce event, or something like that, where I at least have some inkling of an idea of why I know this person or don't know this person. So on a day like yesterday, again, when I'm working from home, I actually will take like an hour and go through recent connections. I'll go through the people you may know, that kind of stuff, and add or take out folks, or send those kind of messages that I'm talking about. I'll send them a separate email and just, if their contact information is on their page, I assume they want to be found. A lot of times people will say, oh, I don't want to reach out to, XYZ person because I don't actually know them, and, it's probably impolite. Well, 9 times out of 10, they're here for the same things you are, and folks are waiting on, nobody wants to be the first one to have to make that reach. But a lot of times it's well received, and if nothing else, I just don't get a response. I never get anybody who's nasty and says, why are you emailing me, that kind of thing.
It's okay to put your contact information in the message, correct?
Yes.
There's no rule against that.
No, so you can put your contact information in the message and say, hey, looking to connect, my company sells Band-Aids and I see your Boy Scouts group is going on a camping trip, in 2 months and would love to supply the Band-Aids that I know you guys are gonna need, I can be reached at this number or this email.
Right.
The easier you make it for folks to find you, the more likely they are to come find you.
Yeah, but that is not in mail, right?
Right.
You
So
gotta pay for it.
in-mail is a little bit different, so I'm glad you brought that one up. So to the point, in-mail is messages that you can send to second or third connections that LinkedIn makes you pay for. So it's part of your premium subscription, depending on how high up the food chain you go as far as which package you buy. You get either 5, 15, or 30, unless they've changed that in the last 3 or 4 weeks. You get 5, 15, or 30, depending on how high up you go, in-mails per month that you can send to literally just anybody that you decide to. And every month it resets the counter on how many of those blind messages that you're able to send. So if you're somebody who's in sales, for example, or you're in HR and recruiting, or maybe you're the business development arm of your company, it's probably beneficial to have those 30 messages that you can send to somebody who you can already go in and pre-scrub and determine that they are more likely to be interested in your Band-Aids again than I would. So it might be useful to you in that regard, but for everybody, it's not necessarily just blanketly the way you want to go.
So for someone like me who doesn't have any snow day because I worked yesterday. And
Well, I worked from home. Let me clarify.
Nah, okay. Well, just say, in a year or two, I've become very busy as the presidency of Child Public Relations event. I specifically do federal and state and local government procurement. So, also specifically under NGLCC too. I don't do business outside of that arena. So what I've recognized, that why I asked you about, the URL, it's because I was, a company had imported my profile from Ariba Sourcing, and they had asked me to fill out a customer requested profile, and they wanted your LinkedIn, your Facebook, and your, I think it's Instagram or Twitter, Twitter, one of the things. And so as far as that, since as I am just not say pigeon-toed into just doing federal government and stuff like that, there's a lot of things as a PR company that I don't want to get out there. And there's a lot of people that I don't want to invite in my world also because of the ramifications of when you do stuff like that. So how basic should I just keep my profile? Because I haven't been there in a while because just I don't have the time. It's not messy, don't worry. So what are the basics that I need? Just company information, my skills, make sure I update my skills regularly. I need help on that because
I think I get where you're going. So that's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. So as a business owner, I'm going to go there again because a lot of times when you come to the chamber, you're the representative of your own business. And so you have two choices. You can kind of fall into the middle of the road, but it's kind of a waste of your time. You have two choices. One, have a stagnant profile on here that just has all of the information, the good stuff that you want everybody to know about you personally and then your business separately. My recommendation is that you go in quarterly and update that information. Maybe you joined a new charity since then, you joined the board from volunteer or from committee member or whatever, and you just want to make sure you update that and highlight yourself a little bit. And then also answer any messages that have been sent to you in that time too. Because believe it or not, people actually do use different social media platforms as one of their main methods of communication. So you might get an in-mail message from somebody on here that you look at and it could have been better served as a text message, but because they are active LinkedIn users, they assume so are you. And you might have the notifications on your cell phone turned off and not see it. So you want to make sure that at least quarterly you go in and just check for that kind of stuff. But having a stagnant page, I don't think is a bad thing. Like I said, it at least makes sure that I know that you exist. So if I'm coming to your company to find your services, I know that, okay, I've been to your personal webpage, your company's webpage, and now I've seen your LinkedIn webpage. Because when I do a Google search, because of how big a company LinkedIn is, you're going to show up as one of the top 2 returns that I get on there. And I'll show you really quickly.
I mean, just to add, it's very important just so anybody who's doing federal or state or local government procurement, they do look into it. Because even on SAM management, they're asking you to put that information now, and even resourcing, all the procurement and stuff like that, they're asking you to put that information, you know, of your URL of like LinkedIn specifically, which is number one and stuff like that. So that's a good help actually.
So if you go in here and do this web search that I just did, the very first thing to show up here is LinkedIn. So above your company's webpage, because your company webpage is not going to get as many hits as LinkedIn does on a daily basis, you're going to see that LinkedIn profile, even above Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is a large enough corporation that they normally would show up at the top of everything, but even my LinkedIn profile shows up higher than that. So if nothing else, having that stagnant page built in there helps you make sure that you don't get lost in the shuffle when people are going and doing that kind of search. So the next thing I want to show you is the searching capabilities of LinkedIn. So at the very top, instead of the way it used to be in the good old LinkedIn days, where you had a search bar over on the right-hand side and the ability to do an advanced search and really drill down the way you're looking, they've consolidated literally everything into this little search bar up here in the left-hand corner. So the way to game that and not have to go through the process of typing in the name of every single thing that you're looking for is to just click this spyglass here, this magnifying glass here, and it'll take you directly to this search page. Wait, that's not it. There it is. Okay, so it'll take me to this search page and then allow me to look at either the top responses that it deems appropriate for what I looked for, or the people who are in my network first, and then it'll go all the way down through second and third connections. Any jobs that might be out there that it deems related to what I do, or posts, and so on and so on and so on. But this is now the new way to search. Instead of having all these different options built out on the right-hand side, it just consolidated them all, and so that when you put in one keyword at the top here, it pulls it all down. So if I just go banking, for example, and I go to, okay, so it's on jobs, so it'll show me all the best banking jobs that it recommends for me based on my profile. Or it'll show me all the top results that, you know, it determines. So people and then jobs and whatever. Or it'll show me all the people who are related to the banking profession, and so on and so on. You guys get the point. So on the right-hand side, it does allow me to go in and filter still the way it used to. So I can first say I only want to see my first connections who are in banking. And then I can go in and say, or I only want to see my second connections who are in banking, because I already know the people I know. I want to know the people they know. So I can go in here now, and you see it's reduced it down to 25,000 people at the top here. From 400 million, 25,000 is a decent sample size. But then I can also go in and modify the location and say, I only want to talk to people in the Washington, D.C. area. And now I've brought it from 25 to 5,000. And then I can go in and say, I only want to talk to people who are at my company. And so that'll take it from 5,000 down to 121. And then maybe I say, I only want to talk to the people from my company who went to my college, for example. Or because it's up here and easy, I'll just do University of Maryland. So now I've narrowed it all the way down to 7 people who are in this field that I'm looking for, who are connected to somebody else who I'm connected to, who also work for the company that I work for, who are in my geographic location and went to the school specifically that I'm looking for, and you get the picture. So it took it all the way from 400 million to 25,000 to 5,000 to 117 to 7, all through me just clicking 7 boxes. So if you are a person who is in, like I said, some kind of business development kind of role, or HR or something like that specifically, or you just want to sell your services to a specific company or a specific type of company, using this search feature is going to be your best friend. So you want to do as much as you can to get familiar with it and fall in love with it, even though, as I keep going to, the new platform is driving me crazy. But it's just because it's kind of like not where I left it. But so this allows you to as I mentioned, I can go in here and say, all right, let's say, for example, Luann Dent, whoever this person is, I want to know who I know who's connected to her. So I can actually see down here in these two bubbles, the two people who I know who are connected to her who can introduce me to her. So this is what I was saying before. It's extremely important that you make sure that the folks who you are connected to are real connections. Because when you go to that person and say, and so for example, I can see who these two people are, Kyle and Kim. I can send Kyle an email and say, hey, can you connect me to this lady, Luann Dent, who does X, Y, and Z, because I've seen you guys are buddies on LinkedIn. He's either going to tell me, yeah, sure, because I like you, or I don't actually know that Luann person, and sorry. But the more real connections that you have on your own personal profile, the more you can be of service to someone else when they call you up and say, hey, can you connect me to this person or that person? The more likely folks will continue to call you, and you have a reason to be talking to them about how wonderful your business is and the services that you offer. You see how this thing works? Awesome. So, got a question here?
Early on, you had asked me what NGLCC was. Volkswagen is one of the corporate sponsors of NGLCC, and this is just for information purposes. I'm not naming you to the wall. So I can relate to them. How come is it that if you deal with loans, right?
Mm-hmm.
How come you don't know about NGLCC if Volkswagen is a corporate sponsor of NGLCC?
You're putting me on the spot on camera, but I will tell you that we have 300,000 employees who all have different interests in our different geographical locations. The Washington, D.C. area is sort of my hub, and this is where a lot of my focus gets paid, but I'm only one person. So we do have a bunch of different groups within the organization that all sponsor different types of things, and so it allows you to kind of cling to each one of those things that tugs at your own personal heartstrings. Mine just don't happen to be aligned with that organization. Like, I haven't been to any events that align with that organization, but there's plenty of room and opportunity, I'm sure, for us to.
Purposes, would you like to know more about that organization?
Absolutely. I'm a person who values information more than almost anything else.
So I'm just asking from my side as a diverse supplier under NGLCC, and you in Wells Fargo's, in some way we may cross lines of doing business and stuff like that. How can we bridge that gap? I mean, I can give you my card and we can.
I think that's one we should probably take offline and take up after the presentation, but I'm happy to talk to you about it. And as you can see from my profile, because I actually built it out all the way to make sure that I gave people as much information as I possibly could, I am actually our local supplier diversity liaison. So I would be the person, if you're interested in figuring out ways to link your company to mine, to help you facilitate that conversation. But obviously that's one that appeals to the few and not the many, so I'll, like I said, take that one offline and pick it back up when we get done. But the very last thing I wanted to run through that I had kind of scripted, and then I'll take as many questions as I haven't answered already through the presentation, is the settings. And this is extremely important because it allows you to determine how people find you, if and when people find you, that sort of thing. LinkedIn allows you to have one page per email address. So if you have a company email address and then you also have a business that you run on the side of your 9 to 5, for example, you don't necessarily want to go in here and put that second email address under that same one profile, because LinkedIn will recognize, if you ever try to create a company page for your side hustle, LinkedIn would go in and recognize that you already are subscribed to one profile. We won't allow you to create a company profile separately. And then on a completely different note, for those of you who don't have a company profile yet but are thinking you may want to at some point, you have to have a company domain name for them to allow you to create that company profile. So no Gmails, Yahoos, and that kind of thing, email addresses. It has to be to your company's domain name. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you decide how to integrate this into your company's marketing plan going forward. And then also, obviously, like I said, you want to make sure that as much of your information that you're willing to share actually shows. And then subscriptions. So you can actually go down here to the bottom, merge, maybe you created 2 LinkedIn profiles at one time, but you don't need to have 2 anymore. You can actually merge those profiles, their history and that content, so that you don't have to start from the bottom and LinkedIn completely forgets that you ever existed. So that's extremely important for folks who maybe worked for one company, created a LinkedIn profile, then worked for another company, created another LinkedIn profile, and so on, which I have seen done quite a few times, especially folks who have different clearances and stuff as you start to get into layers of the government. You can actually merge those profiles if one of them is no longer necessary or things change in that regard. And then the privacy settings on here allow you to, as I mentioned, allow you to determine who can see your profile and who can see your connections. So on mine, for example, I have it set so only I can see my connections. The industry that I'm in, I'd much rather everybody else not know who my customers are. And so that's the reason that mine is set to private. But if you're a person who's in the information sharing business, then maybe you want to have yours turned on so that, as I said, folks can come to you and say, hey, I saw that you're connected to Blase Blah. Can you also introduce me to that person? So it's just a matter of what your comfort is with other people being able to see who you know. However, depending on what industry you're in, it may give you some credibility to be able to say, oh, that person's connected to, excuse me, that person's connected to, you know, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, this attorney, that whoever. It gives you a little bit more credibility to have a network of people who also share that information. And then also where I mentioned before that you have the ability to update people whenever you make an edit to a specific section on your page. The second place that you can make sure that it just blanketly doesn't do it ever at all is in here in the privacy settings. So mine stays set to off. And now because it asks me in the presentation, do you want to go in on this particular edit and alert people now that you've made a change, and you can toggle between yes and no, it's fine to leave this one set as no blanketly so that you're not that annoying LinkedIn user who I disconnect from because I'm seeing your stuff. Because as much as we do want you to be on here and active and using it, we want to make sure that you're not annoying people to death. And then lastly, I mentioned before the need to get found as frequently as you possibly can. And so what I want to show you guys is your feed and your ability to post. So it does take a good bit of work, I understand, to write original content and give people sort of your thoughts on yourself as a thought leader in an industry. But I'm sure I don't have to tell you how important it is in your arena to be thought of as someone who is a thought leader on a particular industry. So the more original content you are writing and posting here to LinkedIn, the better off you are, the more you look like a person who actually knows something and didn't just take whatever certification exam and, you know, kind of hang your shingle like everybody else. So up here where it says articles, it shows you everything that I've written in the last probably 12 months. But I personally said I'm going to commit to doing one of these a month. I'll write something on a topic that people are actually interested in. And LinkedIn actually categorizes how many people have viewed each one of those for you and gives you the statistics on it just below it. So as I'm going through these, you can see here how many people actually viewed your post, how many people liked it, shared it, what have you. Unfortunately, it is not set up to show you how many people viewed it when you share it to a group. It only shows you how many people came looking for your particular post. So the numbers, it does show it if you pay for that subscription, let me say it that way. So I haven't paid for that particular subscription that would show me that information. So it'll only show me if and when somebody is coming across my page and they click on and intentionally read one of the articles that I published. But if you do go through the trouble of writing original content, you want to make sure that you're also sharing them to your groups and not just to your own feed. And if you're in 20 groups and 20 groups are related to what you do professionally, share it to 20 groups. If you're in 20 groups and only 10 of them are related to what you do professionally, share it to those 10 groups. You want to make sure that you put it in front of as many people as you possibly can so that it's constantly getting shared around the platform. And like I said, create this endless loop of you. I also have mine linked to my Twitter page. So every time I publish something on here on my LinkedIn page, it creates a new Twitter posting. And now folks are able to retweet it, share it, send it out again. And like I said, creates this endless loop of everything coming back to eyeballs on my page. And then also, if you click on it to see the numbers behind it, it'll actually show you a little bit more information, where folks are coming from, what geographic area the viewers of your stuff are in, what companies they work for, that kind of stuff. And then also posts. So if I go in here and I decide, you know what, writing is great, but I do not have the time, or I just do not have anything interesting to talk about that frequently that people are going to be interested in reading, you can actually take other pieces of content and share them to your LinkedIn page as a post. So for example, I don't know why the graphic won't show up on here, but there's an event that Wells Fargo has coming up in Baltimore next week that I'm a part of. So I shared the information for the event. It's actually a flyer with it too. I don't know why the graphic isn't showing up, but that's something that I broadcast to my 500-600 connections that I have on there, and it shows up in their feed as they log in the morning or whenever and see it. So that's another way to sort of make yourself present as somebody who is either an expert in your particular field or someone who's engaged in a few different things and has, all these different organizations that you're a part of. And then, as I mentioned, LinkedIn will show you, LinkedIn will show you how many people viewed that particular post and catalog it for you here. Unfortunately, on the free version, they will only show you the last month worth of posting. And then it'll start to lock it up. So it goes 194 views here. And then, as you can see, the very next ones are a month away. And so they get stingy and take it away because I didn't pay for it. So just be cognizant of that too. If you're a person who's interested in knowing who's paying attention to your stuff, do it within a month's time, because then they'll take it away from you unless you're willing to pay for the premium subscription. And then they do also aggregate it all in one place for you to show you all of your activity. Like, for example, a friend of mine got a new job, so I liked the update on my page or in my feed. It shows up in my feed that a friend of mine got a new job, for example, or somebody mentioned me in a posting, so I liked the posting that mentioned me, and so on and so on. You guys get it. And I had a question back here.
Oh yeah, sorry. I hope it's not off your topic. I just bought a subscription to Sales Navigator.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of that?
I'm thinking about it, I wanted to get his
Yeah.
opinion on it.
And yesterday, for example, I posted or wrote an article, a short thing about something that happened to me, work related, last week. How do I know who has viewed it? How many people? I'm just building my Sales Navigator. Is that showing to all my connections in LinkedIn normal, or just the few people I've populated my Sales Navigator with, or how do I know, as compared to premium, who's read it?
So it all pulls the information from the same place. If you click on My Network here, it asks you to add your personal contacts. Whoever is in that contact list, where you import your personal contacts based on your email address book, that's who all is going to show up and get automatic updates every time you publish something through that, through that program. The only thing, my hesitancy, and the thing that I'll warn you about, is that any information you share with LinkedIn or any other of these social media type platforms, you're now giving them permission to sell it to somebody else on the back end. So I personally haven't imported my entire contact list because they haven't paid me for it. And so just be cognizant of the fact that the more you import into those kind of things, the more you're giving away to these companies. It would help you as far as making your life a little bit simpler when you create these postings that you want people to see. So in your case, it's probably worth connecting it and sending it out that way. You also have the ability to link it to all of your social media platforms too. So you can put in your Twitter and your LinkedIn and whoever else. If you connect your LinkedIn page to your Sales Navigator and give it permission to, so in the settings here, it asks you about sharing to third-party organizations. on, I think it's here. Yeah, so it asks you about sharing information to third-party apps here. You would want to go in and connect that third-party app to your LinkedIn profile so that the two of them are constantly talking to each other when you create new content and share it. So I was saying that every time I create a new article on here or share a new article on here, it automatically posts to my Twitter feed. It would do the same with Sales Navigator for you.
So sorry, what I posted yesterday is only going to be visible to those who go into my LinkedIn page currently.
It's going to be visible to those who are connected to you on LinkedIn, yes, assuming you have connected the two applications to each other.
Got it.
And it'll ask you, if you leave the notifications on in Sales Navigator, it'll ask you which functions you want it to post that to. So it'll say, do you want to publish this to your LinkedIn page, your Twitter feed, your blah, blah, blah. It's in your settings. You have to ask it to, yeah.
I'm just curious real quick, what level service do you have? Did you mention that?
I have the paid subscription. I have the mid-level one. I don't have the one that allows me to just blanketly send out 30 InMails a month, because based on my industry regulations, we're not even allowed to use
So you have a
InMail.
basic
Mhm.
version, okay.
Just so that I can still see things like who viewed my profile, so that I can see how many people viewed the posts that I published, so that I know which things were actually interesting and which weren't. Also, another reason I use it is it'll tell you each person. So if every time I'm sharing something or every time I'm posting something, you're viewing it or you're actually going through and liking it or sharing it to your group too, I want to know that kind of stuff so that I know. I put a little tick mark on my spreadsheet of who I'm reaching out to. This person is actually engaged in the content that I'm sharing on LinkedIn, or this person's actually engaged in the content that I'm sharing on Twitter or whatever. Socialware will aggregate all that kind of stuff to you, but since I'm on LinkedIn literally every single day, I do it myself. Did I have any more?
About an hour a day?
Probably an hour every morning I spend on LinkedIn. If I'm going to share something, the ideal times from every training that I've been to and everything I've read is either during lunchtime or the late afternoon. So either like 12:15, 12:30, or maybe like 4:45, I'll actually click the share button, but I'll take the time to build it in the morning.
And have it ready to go.
Right.
Thank you.
Can you schedule posts on LinkedIn like you can on other?
You can't. Not for free. So you do have other programs that you can buy that'll allow you to schedule like 15 a day and that kind of stuff. Socialware is the one that I'm aware of that I've used and actually like. You get what you pay for, I think. But there's like 15 different programs out there at this point that would allow you to do that kind of stuff. But LinkedIn isn't, not yet. They will figure out a way to work it in to charge you for it, but they haven't quite gotten there yet. Anybody else?
I've read an article, I think through LinkedIn at one point, somebody had posted about how to edit your profile so that it is more appealing to those who you'd like to do business with. So instead of being your resume on LinkedIn, that it's more of here's what my job is with this company, but also here's what I could do for you. So it's written more in that way that it's, I guess, more engaging to those people who might be looking to do business with you. Or
So that's why I say it's really important to build out this experience section on your own profile. So you can go in here and talk about what you've done at each one of these companies, for example. So say I did the exact same thing at both of these companies, which really I did. I can still focus on one specific thing here and then focus on one specific thing here. And so that way, as you're going through and finding out all the things I'm capable of doing, it speaks to what you're talking about. I've talked about now a really big project that I helped deliver on at this company, and then I talked about a organization that I helped start within this company. So it allows me to kind of brag on those kind of things that you don't get to put anywhere else in here. And then in your summary section at the very top, the reason I say I came to this last and I want to make sure that I give you the advice that I've gotten that I thought was really good, which is that you write this after you've taken the time to build out your whole profile. Because once you've gone through the trouble of reminding yourself all the wonderful things that you've done, adding things into each section and adding different skills and all that kind of stuff, it helps jog your memory a little bit better and helps you write a better summary up top here. Your summary up top here is going to be all the specific things that you're capable of doing that you want people to know, that's kind of blanketed, like in this industry, I am a pioneer in this type of thing, and I'm a leader who thinks outside of the box and blah, 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 blah. That's all the stuff that you want to figure out a way to give to people here. When you go down into your different summaries of experience, that's where you want to go through the trouble of writing in some very specific details on what you've done at those companies so that it tells people what you're capable of doing. So maybe you won a contract from the Department of Defense for $20 million for your company. There you go in and put a blurb about that, how you did it, when you did it, all that kind of stuff. And then for the next company you worked for, you designed some software that revolutionized the way that they, do whatever. That's where you go in and put that blurb and so on and so on. So the top part, you want to focus on you and all the great things that you can do. Down here, you want to talk about all the things that you've done in the past.
Yeah, but the article I was reading was saying maybe that type of format is good if you're searching for a job or other employment. But if you're looking to more market your company and engage people with your company, or in my case, an organization, it's great if they know all the things that I've done and that I can do. But if I really want to showcase, well, I'm the connector for the American Cancer Society in the DC area. So
Right.
if you are interested in engaging with the American Cancer Society, here are the doors that I can open for you. So more, I guess, merging that.
You would write that up top in your summary.
Personal profile with my company or my organization and what my organization is looking to do. So, some people have, if it's a small business, a lot of people would have that as a separate page. But I'm trying to kind of merge the two into my personal profile a little bit as well.
That's a tougher one to do. That's the reason you have the company page, so that it can brag for you, and then you can kind of
Right.
focus on yourself. It is kind of a tightrope, and it's really just going to depend on what your comfort level ends up being. I don't know that there's any secret sauce to navigating that one, but I will say people are going to read the about page a lot more than they're going to take the time to read your experiences. So the information that you want to convey, kind of your elevator speech, you want to have in that about section, not down here in the experience section. And it's yours to write however you want to. So you see mine has not bullet points because I don't want the system to recognize the bullets and kick me out, but it has basically a bulleted list of all the stuff that I want to go in. There's no framework that says I have to do it that way. These could be 12 different paragraphs that I built in about the stuff. So take advantage of all of the white space that you have. Anybody else? Okay, well, I'm going to take that to mean that I did a great job and answered all the questions that you guys had. But I'll be here for a little bit if you do think of something else, or maybe you had something to a question you brought with you and didn't want to ask in front of the group. You're welcome to it. But with that said, you guys have my card in front of you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Also, do connect to me on LinkedIn. I promise I'll recognize your faces. But with that said, enjoy your afternoon. Stay warm, and we'll see you at the next Chamber event.